moving swiftly on. Now, if you dream of having...
And here they are with us in the studio. Good morning to all of you. 11 parents from 11 families, lives forever changed, and they're going to be putting their questions a bit later in the programme to Government Minister and to the head of Ofcom. We're
going to start this morning with Mariano. Morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us this morning about Mia. And I know today for all of you is very much an opportunity to do something constructive, to make a change. Yeah. You've all been through this awful experience, and I know that you're all here because you don't want anybody else to experience this from now on. Yeah. So, Mariano, tell us, what do you think should change about children's access to social media? What difference would it have made for Mia?
To be safer, they has to have some boundaries. I'm against banning phones or all this. Banning is not the forbidden things. It's the forbidden fruit. We need to have a safer internet, social media places, regulated, and learn to live with this. It's a modern tool. It's part of our age. It's part of our daily life. But unfortunately, I think the tech companies need to understand the concept of safeguarding and well-being of our kids. And they have the resources and the technology to do something as well.
We're going to talk a bit later about the government's new law and how that might work and what else you'd like to see change. And I know that among your experiences, you've got different ideas about what might work and what might not work, and we'll go through a range of those. Ellen, can we talk to you about Jules, Jules was 14. Do you tell us about Jules?
Yes, my son Jules, was...
No, you take your time. We're here to go easy, so if you want a break, you have a break.
He was 14 and a normal child, didn't have any mental health, well, not that we knew of. He was just a regular, happy, normal child. And in April 2022, 2 years ago, I came home and our world had changed. And we don't know why he did what he did. The coroner didn't rule that it was suicide because they couldn't prove he was in a suicidal mood. And at the time, we were talking earlier, that you sort of take it on board when the police tell you these things, and you go, OK, and you're following because you're in this world of haze. And actually, looking back now, it's not good enough. Why did my son do that? Because he was absolutely fine an hour and a half before. You can hear him on our Ring doorbell saying goodbye to his friend Monty, saying, "Goodbye, Monty, see ya." And he was normal, and he was a happy child. So what happened to make him suddenly decide to end his life?
And what do you suspect happened?
Well, I don't know if it's social media, but I think as parents we should have the right to be able to see it, and I don't have the right to see my child's social media. And we can see medical records, you know, bank statements, but not their social media, and that's wrong. I should be able to at least rule out if it's that, and if it isn't that, then why are they hiding it? Why can't I see it?
So that's the kind of thing that you're going to want to put questions to a little bit later. Yeah.
I think that's something that will surprise a lot of parents watching this morning. You would assume that you would be able to look at what your child's been looking at.
Yeah.
But what have you been told? What barriers do you come up against?
TikTok have just said no. You know, without a court order, you can't do that. So we're then having to get a court order, thank go, to get my child's social media, to even just rule it out. But I'm left as a parent going, well, why is my child not here? And that is not acceptable to me.
And that must make you just feel powerless, answerless.
Awful. If it was a child that died with an illness, you'd be doing a post-mortem to then work out what it was. So I'm just told I have to accept, or we're just told we have to accept why. We don't know why. That's not good enough.
Ruth, tell us a little bit about Sophie, because I know you're all here under slightly different circumstances, but there is a theme that links all of you, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. So Sophie died in 2014, really before this topic was in the news. And when I went onto her social media, Sophie died by suicide at 13. When I went onto her social media, there was a barrage of really distressing material on her iPad and on her phone. And she'd been required to have a tablet for school for homework purposes, so we had given her that for school. And we'd found it really difficult to control. We had parental controls at home, we had them at the school, they had them, but she would access the internet in other ways if she was on the bus coming home with her brother. And I was horrified to see the amount, the quantity and the actual content was really distressing. She'd actually managed to investigate and research how she was going to die by suicide, and it was blatant and it was horrifying. No 13-year-old should see that sort of material.
It is almost impossible to police for a parent, isn't it? Just tell us how difficult that was for you.
It was really hard. So we did all the things that parents should do. We had those conversations. We locked down our internet, and yet she still would find ways to circumvent the things that we had put in place. And I think the thing that struck me was it was just too big. It was too ubiquitous. It was everywhere. So you can't escape it. It was very difficult.
10 years on, we have a new act, a law, which is supposed to clamp down on the kind of exposure young people have on social media. What are you looking to hear this morning from a government minister, from the head of Ofcom, about how this might be prevented for kids in future?
I want assurances that that Ofcom will do the things that they say that they will do. And the second thing is, for me, I've watched a transition of technology throughout the ages. So TikTok didn't exist when Sophie was alive. So I want a confirmation as well that this isn't just a tick box exercise that ends today, but that as technology changes, that the governments will listen to parents and adapt and make sure that this is an ongoing issue that is dealt with.
And Liam, I can see you listening there and nodding along. Obviously, those words really resonate for you too.
Yeah. I'd just like to see it safer than it currently is. That's all I want to see. That's, it's simply put, I don't trust it. I did trust it. I trusted the environment, and I was wrong. And it would be good if that was rectified.
Your daughter was Maya.
Yeah.
What happened to her?
She got pulled into a circus through TikTok into suicide ideology, which she was sharing and bantering with her friends. And things went from rosy, beautiful and positive and embracing of life to that caught her on a bad day. And it took her.
So sorry. So sorry to you, to all of you. But it is incredibly powerful to see and hear all of you together this morning. What kind of sense do you get from this solidarity, although your experiences are different? Just explain, to be here together.
Just the stronger voice. I mean, to have all these people on the couch, a club that we never want to be in, it pulls us all together for a greater voice, and we just want some accountability. And if we just try and stop one parent going through what we're going through, then we've done a good job. But the sad thing is the snail pace that's happening with Ofcom and social media platforms taking responsibilities. Reality is there is going to be more cases.
Yeah. And Lisa, what would you like people to know about Isaac?
Like many of these children, he was a happy, normal boy, zest of life. He wanted to be rich. He wanted to look after his mum and dad. He was loving. Every day told us that he loved us. He was highly inquisitive, highly intelligent, and he just wanted to know how things worked. And he got sucked into doing something that he got a high out of by doing the blackout challenge. And he took it a little bit further, and consequently He passed away on the 9th of March 2022.
And Lisa, you must feel now, I know like a lot of you, like you want to kind of shout at people about this. And
Yeah.
how frustrating is it that still for children, the internet, social media doesn't feel regulated?
It's highly frustrating because it's almost like an insult to us parents. Like, they're not taking it seriously enough. Like Ruth said, it's like a tick box. They're just ticking and making all the right sounds but not the right action. And it is frustrating, but hopefully with all us together, the voice will get louder.
Well, thank you for using your voices so far this morning. We'll let you go and have a little break and have a cup of tea, and we'll hear from all of you as the programme goes on, especially at 8 o'clock, when we're going to have a special hour of the programme devoted to you and your stories and your questions, and we'll try and get you some answers. So thank you all again, and as Sally was saying, it's so important to have you all here this morning. Thank you for now.
Now, it is 6:46. Let's go to Matt, who has the weather for us. Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with John Kay and Sally Nugent. And for the next hour here on the programme, we're focusing on the online safety of children.
Good morning. These are the faces of 11 young people whose deaths were all linked to social media. And this morning, we'll be asking what could have been done to prevent their deaths.
And how the internet can be made safer for our young people. We're joined in the studio this morning by the parents of those 11 children. They have all written to Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer today, urging them to do more to protect young people online.
Brianna was accessing content like that, and it makes me feel a bit ashamed.
A bit ashamed?
That I didn't prevent her from looking at.
It's so hard. And it's not just that this content is there, that it's the platforms are promoting this content.
Well, this comes as the media regulator, Ofcom, today sets out plans which it says will force tech companies to make their platforms safer.
And we will hear from children who use smartphones and access social media. How safe do they feel online?
Here on the programme this morning, a special edition of Breakfast. We're asking a question that is raised by parents and grandparents and carers right across the UK every single day. How safe are our children online?
You will recognise some of these young faces. Their families all believe that social media played a part in their deaths. And this morning, they're sending an open letter to both the Prime Minister and the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, urging them to make online safety a priority.
Their parents have joined us here in the studio, and during the next hour, they will be putting their questions direct to the government's technology minister and to the head of the regulator, Ofcom.
They'll be asking how much difference the new online safety law will actually make. What more could and should be done? Should under-16s be banned from having smartphones? How can parents trust who their kids are talking to? And what are they actually seeing online?
And of course, we would love to hear from you about your families, your experiences and your own questions.
Well, today, the UK's media regulator, Ofcom, has set out its plan to force tech companies to make their platforms safer.
Well, the mother of Brianna Jai, who was murdered by two teenagers, and the father of Molly Russell, who died by suicide, have together been to meet the head of Ofcom, as our correspondent Angus Crawford reports.
I want to know what they've got to say, and I want them to meet people with lived experience.
I think it's really important to try and understand what Ofcom are doing, because from the outside they seem to be doing so little, which is ridiculous and frustrating.
Brianna and Molly, their short lives spurring their parents on to try and make the online world a safer place for all children, today holding the regulator to account. We showed them posts and pictures easy to find on social media of self-harm, suicide and eating disorders, freely available to children.
Had you seen content like that?
I know that Brianna was accessing content like that, and it makes me feel a bit ashamed.
A bit ashamed?
That I didn't prevent her from looking at.
It's so hard. And it's not just that this content is there, that it's the platforms are promoting this content. Their algorithms are suggesting to young people that they see ever more of it. So people like Brianna, people like Molly, and too many more.
What we're doing is ensuring that we crack down on...
Years in the making, much delayed, the Online Safety Act finally passed last year and promised to fix all this.
The Online Safety Bill will require platforms to remove and limit the spread of illegal content.
Now they bring those questions to Ofcom, the regulator, to find out what's going on.
Esther and Ian, thank you so much for coming in.
Ofcom does have new powers under the Act, but it can't start enforcing them yet. Today, it's launching a consultation on how best to protect children. But for Ian and Esther, delays cost lives.
It's about putting the onus of responsibility onto the tech firms.
They show Ofcom's chief executive the same self-harm, suicide content we found online.
That's what you've got to remove.
Yeah.
So it isn't easily available.
No, exactly. I mean, this has become normalised. This sort of material has become normalised, not just for adults, but for children. And honestly, I think we're going to look back on this, I hope we are anyway, in 5 and 10 years' time and just go, how on earth did we let this happen?
Nothing seems to have changed. This is frustrating for I think, parents like us, but frustrating for all parents.
Well, look, I agree. There is so much that needs to change here. And all I can say is that at Ofcom we are moving forward really, really fast to get these new laws properly set out in detail. And within a year, they will be there, we will be able to enforce against them. And what we're saying to companies is everybody has waited too long for change.
I'd like to know what the reaction of the social media companies have been.
These companies are on the west coast of America mostly, and they don't really hear and understand quite the impact that they're having on British families and on British kids. What we're asking of them in these proposals and in what we've set out already is a really big change. We're proposing changes that will require age checks, that will require those recommender algorithms to change so they don't feed that material anymore. And the law is really clear that pornography, suicide and self-harm material must not be served to under 18s. And so the algorithms are going to have to change to make that happen. Whether or not we should go further and lift that age limit by law or even ban children from apps and social media altogether under the age of 18, look, my personal view here is that if the companies don't actually start to implement what we're asking for quite quickly, then I think it will become harder and harder to resist those firmer measures. I hope you'll carry on holding us to account as parents for this. I really do admire what you've done and appreciate the fact that you come and engage with what we're trying to do.
I think that when you've been through something like what we've been through, it could either break you or it can give you an extra level of mental resilience, I suppose. And I think that we've both got that and we've both got that drive.
We'll be on Ofcom's back every step of the way, because at the end of the day, there shouldn't be another Molly and there shouldn't be another Brianna.
Well, Esther and Ian join us here in the studio now alongside all of the other parents also campaigning for online safety measures. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Esther, I know that was a tough watch for you. Tough to talk about this and tough to go through all of that again. Did you feel that you gained something from that meeting? Could you say exactly how you felt? Did you feel listened to?
Yes, so I did feel listened to, and I feel like the team at Ofcom really do care and they really do want to make this work. I think that it's really important now for us all to work together, like with this consultation, see if there are any bits that need change and need amending, and yeah, like I say, work together. And it's really, really important for the social media companies to work with Ofcom as well.
So this is a pivotal moment, isn't it? Lots of parents who might be watching this morning might not realise this is the moment to try and affect change.
Yeah, it is. And like we're all here today because we've all been affected by. Sorry, it's the first time that we've all met, and hearing everybody's stories, it's so emotional. And I also think that, like, our stories are public, but how many children are actually struggling with the mental health? How many children have been affected, are self-harming, have eating disorders, have taken their own lives that we don't actually know about, that hasn't been sort of identified towards social media. So I think this is a pivotal point, and we're all standing united to make sure that that change happens.
Every one of your stories is different. Every child's different. Every child's experience of social media and the internet is different, isn't it, Ian? And yet, what strength and solidarity do you take as well by coming together as one this morning?
It's quite overwhelming, John. I'm just looking into the faces of people who I've grown to know over the last few years and months. None of us should be here. It's wrong what's happened. But the power by coming together to tell these stories, as Esther was saying, we hope will produce change that means that the digital lives of young people in particular will be safer. There's been frustration. The Online Safety Act came into effect. It became a law towards the end of last year, and nothing very much seems to have happened because that's just part of the process. And so what we want to explore today is to make sure that Ofcom as regulator will do everything it can to push this Act, its powers within this Act forward, and the government don't take their foot off the gas, because this job isn't finished yet.
OK, and I know you've all brought questions with you for the Minister and for Ofcom, and we'll have lots of time to do that over the next few minutes.
But now, let's hear a little bit more about the children at the very heart of this story.
So, Maya, what you gonna do in the future?
Maya had her life all mapped out.
Straight row of A's as soon as I get to secondary school. Succeed in college and get my qualifications. Get a great job.
But even in paradise, Maya's phone was a distraction. She was 13 when she died. Her dad says he found self-harm videos on her mobile. Sophie was also 13.
I had a look at her iPad and was horrified to find memes, imagery, online material that showed how you could kill yourself.
14-year-old Molly had been consumed by these videos. A coroner said harmful online content contributed to her death.
I have no doubt Instagram helped kill my daughter.
Christopher was 15.
They sent Christopher a photo with knives. She was saying to him, "You've got to try it."
Brianna's murderers had watched videos of torture and murder on the dark web. They were 15. Ollie died when he was 13.
They're seeing things they shouldn't be seeing at those ages.
Our children are dying.
Amanda and Stuart's son was stabbed by boys who'd shared violent videos online. They'd planned his murder in chat groups.
They're just thrust into a world that's too much for them, too young.
Too violent and too graphic.
Isaac died when he was 13. Jules when he was 14. Archie at just 12. They were all found unconscious and unresponsive by their mothers, who've been fighting for access to their children's social media accounts.
If I knew about these online challenges, then I would have had the conversation with Archie. Something needs to be done.
Maya took her own life after being bullied in school and online.
It's unbearable. It is unbearable. Sorry.
15-year-old Breck was groomed and murdered by an online gamer who reported the crime before posting images of his victim's body in a chat group.
Breck could have been saved if only we had been more aware.
11 young lives cut far too short. Today, their families speak out in the hope they can protect others.
Try. And here they are on the BBC Breakfast sofa together this morning. Thank you all so much for being here. I know what a tough watch that was for everybody at home, so we know it's even tougher, of course, for all of you.
And it's interesting, isn't it? We see those children there on their social media profiles, happy, seemingly happy, laughing, enjoying life. And the simple facts are absolutely devastating when you listen to them. We're joined now by Melanie Dawes, who is the Chief Executive of the regulator Ofcom. And Melanie, in a moment, we are going to open the floor and we're not going to ask questions, but these parents here are going to be asking you questions about how things are going to change. But let's start off by saying, what is different today to make children safer compared to when all of these children died?
But can I just say thank you to the BBC for devoting so much time this morning to such an incredibly important topic. And can I also just say thank you and how much I admire all the parents here for what you do and for the campaigning you've done. And I can feel the emotion in the studio this morning. It's extraordinary, really. What we're announcing today is a very, very big step change in what we want to see from the tech companies. At the moment, teenagers, younger children, up and down the country can experience harmful content on their social media feeds again and again, and this has become normalised, and that has to change. So we are demanding, in what we're saying today, proper age checks, so we know who younger people are, and then that the social media feeds, those algorithms, are radically changed so that suicide and self-harm material, pornography are not available to under 18s in line with the new laws that our Parliament has set out.
Lauren, we saw you talking about Breck in that short film there, and I know you have a question for Melanie.
I do. I mean, it's actually really hard to hear everyone else's story today because even though we've met to see that, it's more hard-hitting because we already have our own children's stories memorized. So I think for me, you know, we know that the children's platforms that the children use and spend so much time on, we know that they put profits over safety. We know this. What reassurances can we have that when parents or children report concerns, something that they're worried about, what reassurances can we get that they'll be listened to, that the platforms will react, that they'll look into the issue and deal with the problem properly?
Look, you're right that at the moment the commercial incentive is everything in how these companies are run, and that's why we need regulation, that's why we need the laws, and that's why we need a regulator like Ofcom to enforce them. So the first thing to say is that we are here to make sure that we understand what's going on and that we address it and that we hold companies to account for fixing it. When it comes to individual things that people might see, experiences they may have, we're also demanding a big improvement in complaints and how they're handled. When we talk to teenagers, actually, this is one of the big things they ask for. They want to be able to report much more easily, and then they want to get an answer when they have said that something has gone wrong. So it's a big part of our proposals.
We literally want you to be as strong as you can towards these tech giants, and literally, when they do wrong, to be fined so that we actually can use those fines to educate our children, to protect our children. Because even though we can't change what happened to us, we want this to make change for children now.
Yeah, and look, we've got a whole set of tools as a regulator. We can demand information, we can levy fines. We're also going to be using our powers to publish a lot of information so that the public knows which companies are implementing the things we're asking for and which ones are not. So
and parents can make a better decision on where they'll allow their children to play online. Yeah,
exactly. We don't want anyone to be able to escape now from the truth, which is that there are serious issues to address here, clear proposals that we're setting out today, and ultimately to give parents and children much better choices about where they spend their time and more empowerment.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. Should we turn to Ruth? Ruth, it was, 10 years ago that Sophie took her own life as a result of what she'd seen on social media. What's your question for Melanie?
Yeah, so obviously I've been doing this for quite a long time, Melanie, now, and I'm a natural cynic anyway. So I suppose from my point of view, I want to know how Ofcom are going to measure and evaluate the success of what you're putting in, and how's that going to happen? What does good look like for you? And that links into keeping up to date with future technology as well. You know, how are you going to keep on top of that bit as well? So there's almost two questions in there, but my concern is, and it comes from that experience of campaigning for so long for change, how are you going to measure and know that you've done a good job?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having to turn around
That's all right.
to talk to you. But look, measurement is really important. And I think one of the problems we have at the moment is that the social media companies don't measure actually what it's like to be a teenager online, what it's like to be a young person online. So we are going to have to force through new ways of actually getting a handle on all of this. We will also, but we will do that. And, you know, ultimately...
How will you do that?
Well, look, ultimately the test is you're 13, you go online, and what happens to your social media feed? Do you still see the content that you get today? Do you still see pornography, suicide and self-harm material at all? Do you still see hateful content, bullying, you know, frequently? That will need to be significantly less of a problem than it is today. So we can test that in lots of different ways. And we're going to be demanding data from the platforms on it, publishing reports on it. I'm just being honest that because it isn't measured today, it's quite an uphill battle to try to get this stuff in place. We're also going to be doing a lot of work with teenagers. We think they are some of the best people to tell us what's going on. And whenever I speak to young people, they're so clear about what they want to change and about what actual design changes to the platforms would help them, like not being included in group chats, for example, that they haven't asked to be included in. So, you know, it's a really important part of what we have to do is be able to measure that success.
And as far as Ruth's other question, I think it's really interesting about in the 10 years since you last lost Sophie, the internet, social media has changed dramatically in that decade. It will no doubt change in ways we can't predict in the next decade. How can you convince these parents and all the mums and dads watching that you're going to keep ahead of that change?
Well, look, you're absolutely right. I think that things have got worse in the last 10 years. I think we've seen the algorithms in particular become much more mainstream in the social media, you know, apps that we all use. Look, it's such an important question. There will be more change. The change is already happening with new forms of AI, for example, making these apps ever more sophisticated. But the good thing about the laws is that they're not restricted to one form of service or one form of technology. So, for example, if suicide and self-harm material, pornography is created by a human or created by AI, it's still caught, it's still a problem, it still shouldn't be shown to young people. But we are very aware that we're going to be managing a very changing environment here.
OK, let's go to Lisa. Lisa, I believe you have a question for Melanie.
I've got a couple of questions, actually. Last year, I actually made a complaint for a video that I had on TikTok, and it came back no violation. I sent it to Ofcom, and they said that they couldn't deal with individual cases. That is a big blow to a parent because you want to protect your child. So the safeguarding, you've nurtured your child throughout the whole of their lives. And I just want to find out how quickly are these complaint procedures going to happen for a single complaint opposed to how would you class a collective complaint?
Yeah, no, look, you're quite right that Ofcom won't have the power to look at individual complaints about individual bits of content on a social media site. So it's different, for example, to TV complaints where you can, at the moment, send us a particular programme you're worried about. And the reason for that is just the scale. So just while we've been talking in the last few minutes, you know, Facebook alone will have moderated probably 50, 100,000 individual bits of content in their systems. So what the laws do is focus on them having their systems and processes in place, but also improving complaints for members of the public, users of the service, and that will be a big thing that Ofcom is holding them to account on.
Yeah, because the video I complained about was a blatant challenge. And if you look on TikTok's terms and conditions, if you like, it says no dangerous content, no challenging. So I'll put that as a it's a very concerning video.
And just to explain to people who are watching, Lisa, you believe that Isaac, your son, had been watching a challenge, as they're called, on social media. before taking his own life, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, they said that he hadn't viewed a TikTok challenge, but he'd got it from somewhere. So the source has come from someone who has probably watched TikTok. So it's going to have a domino effect. So, and that's the frustration thing. This particular video I've made complaints about, they're still up on TikTok. So had the power of a parent, you want to keep your child safe. So if you can't deal with an individual case and TikTok is not taking it seriously, where do you go? What do you do?
Well, look, what we're proposing today is really clear that dangerous challenges need to be significantly filtered down for people under the age of 18. So once you've got the age checks in place and you know who your under 18s are, then those algorithms have got to be radically changed, and this is one of the ways that they need to be changed. So that's the first thing, is for them to take action, the platforms themselves to take action. But then the complaints procedures really do need to improve. And I'm sorry not to be able to say that Ofcom will take individual complaints, but I'm sure you can perhaps appreciate, I think that would just be a volume that we would never be able to commit to manage because it's so vast. But, you know, what we will do everything we can to hold the companies to account for improving their complaints handling, because otherwise they don't know what's going on. It's a really important way for them to be held to account by the public for what's going on their services.
I find it quite frustrating, though, because if it's an individual complaint, how's that going to have the knock-on effect to the social media platforms? How do you police that? And, you know, so I don't mean to give you a hard time, but parents are completely blocked. They don't know where else to go. And, you know, you need to plough in more resources, more people power, opposed to bots, like flagging up certain things, because that's clearly what TikTok's about. They're bots, and they're not picking up words like hold, breath. They're getting through, and they're getting more and more sinister.
Yeah. Well, look, if a parent or a young person has got a piece of content they're concerned about, they can tell us about it, and we will put that information together so we can look for patterns and look for whether particular companies. Yeah, you do send it to me now. In fact, I think we may have seen it already. Actually, I think I'm aware of it. But do send it to us now. What we can't do is deal with that individual issue with the company. We can't take you through their complaints processes. But what we can do is, and will do, is look for patterns. So on the Ofcom website, you can find out how to get in contact with us, and do tell us what's going on, because we want to know.
Parents need an ombudsman or something, children. That's what we really need to be pushing for, in addition to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that would be in addition to what we're doing, to be honest. I think it would be a slightly different role. It could be very complementary.
And Holly, I know you have a question for Melanie now, and Archie died after a TikTok challenge, something very similar to what we've just been talking about here. And now's your moment to ask Melanie what more could be done.
OK, with regards to, I was unaware that Archie was on TikTok and Archie was 12. How are you going to impose and verify their age? Because it doesn't really take a genius to work out a date of birth that gets you one of these social media platforms. It's too easy accessible.
Yes, look, you're quite right. Pretty much all the social media platforms have a minimum age of 13, but they're not doing enough they're not doing anything really at the moment to enforce that. At the moment, they're relying only on asking people what their age is, and clearly that isn't any form of assurance at all. And we know that a third of teenagers online are actually using an adult age. So that has to change, and it's one of the things we're demanding today, that particularly the checks are there for aged 18. When it comes to the age of 13 on social media, if they've got that age in their terms and conditions, we will be holding them to account for it. There are lots of things they can do to make sure that they don't let younger children on. We know that, I'm afraid, 40% of 5 to 7-year-olds currently are on social media in one way or another. And I would say to any parents listening today, it is a very risky environment for children of primary school age, let alone those very young children. Please do be very careful if you think your children are exposed to social media at that age.
As parents, you can only do so much.
Yeah.
And I think obviously I've spoke to everybody here, and we all do our utmost best to safeguard our children. But like I've said before, when your child has access to a mobile phone, you're bringing 1 billion strangers into your home.
Yeah.
You need to do more. you know, and you need to stand by what you're saying that you're going to do. How many children have got to die, and vulnerable people have got to die for you to actually come down harsher?
Yeah, well, look, we're just starting this. The laws came in at the beginning, at the end of October. And look, we do take this very, very seriously. And we are so aware at Ofcom that parents and young people and everyone here today is kind of counting on us to achieve change here. And we take that very, very seriously. And I hope that you will all hold us to account in the months and years ahead. I'm expecting that. That's what I said to Esther and Ian last week. Because, you know, we want you to continue to be, you know, very clear about what needs to change. And I hope you will join us in, you know, holding the companies to account, which is where we really need to see improvements made on really quite a dramatic scale.
One of the interviews that Lisa and myself done on Monday, they said that, I can't remember the exact figure, but you had spoken to a lot of children with regards to the internet and what they feel and what needs improving, and a whole amount of parents. But how many bereaved parents did you actually ask? Because I know, personally myself, my view of the internet, if you asked me 2 years ago, would have been very different and very naive to how I see the internet now. It's a lot more sinister than I thought. The thing I think I've always highlighted is strangers and paedophiles. You know, I didn't know that the internet was full of all this other sinister stuff. Mine, 100% naive. You know, I definitely hold my hands up there, but...
Well, look, I agree with you. Parents can only ever do so much, and it's not right to ask parents or young people to be taking responsibility for this. The responsibility now needs to be on the platforms. We have spoken to a lot of young people already and to a lot of parents about our proposals, and what they've said to us is very much behind what we're setting out today. And we've spoken to a number of people here already as well. But I absolutely commit to you today that we will keep that engagement going, we will extend it. We want to hear from all of you. I think there's a meeting next week to take you through the detail of what we're proposing today. And for me, that's just the beginning.
And Holly, I know that at Archie's inquest they said that he died as the result of a prank that had gone wrong, but you firmly believe he'd seen something on TikTok.
Yes, I do. Archie was a fearless child, there's no doubt about that. You can see that in his videos. He's constantly upside down. But he's also a very vulnerable, he's an SEN child and he's very vulnerable. And I still, the inquest was brushed through very, very quickly, and I don't doubt it's a prank gone wrong, but I do believe that he's been influenced by something, not so much the climbing, but the ligature thing. Where has he seen that? You know, it's...
Archie, you were saying Archie was 12?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there'll be parents watching this morning who are thinking their children are primary school age, maybe just going to secondary school. They shouldn't be on social media, but they're getting social media. I think people will be interested to know, you're talking about checks that the companies can put in place. I think there are reports this morning of maybe kids having to show their passports or something like that, some identification to prove their age. How confident are you that that is watertight, that kids won't cheat it or borrow a passport, that is a reliable way of keeping them safe?
Well, look, what we're requiring is age checks that are highly effective. That phrase, highly effective, that's in law.
What does that mean?
Well, we think it means a very high degree of certainty that under 18s in particular can't be shown an adult internet experience. And we think that there are technologies now that have been tested, and indeed we've already got them introduced on some adult sites that we already regulate, where facial scanning, when you go on, quickly says yes or no, are you under or over the age of 18? You don't need to show any ID, provided that you're clearly over the age of 18. You can carry on and enjoy that adult internet experience. And then if you look a bit younger, then they might ask for ID to back that up. But ID doesn't have to be the answer. It can be very cumbersome. But more and more technologies are coming in that allow, for example, a digital ID that can be used. And again, no data has to be shared or stored. It doesn't have to intrude on anyone's privacy. So we think the solutions are there, and we're asking the industry to start to implement them. They are going to need to do the innovation. They are the tech experts. They have all the resources. We will hold them to account for putting in systems that are effective.
Can I make a small point there, though, about age assurance as well, in that 13 is still a child, 14 is still a child, 15 is still a child. Yet many tech companies assume that if you're 15, that's okay. You know, that it's almost there's this disconnect between what a child really is and what a tech company assumes is. And I think that, you know, for tech companies to assume that it's okay for children to be on Facebook over the age of 13 or 14 is incorrect, because that clearly isn't the case. How is Ofcom managing that?
Yeah. Well, it clearly isn't okay for 13 to 17-year-olds to be on social media today, given that it's not a safe environment for them. So that's what we're saying today, is that we need the algorithms to change. We need a much better system of complaints. We need young people to have more control over who can contact them, over what groups they're added to, so that that environment is then safe. And then if there are under 13s, and if those companies are saying this is okay for 13 plus but not for under 13, then they're going to need to enforce that lower age limit, and we will hold them to account for that.
Melanie Dawes, for now, thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
I know there's a lot more questions still to come. We will get you some answers.
We've been talking about Ofcom's new codes of practice, haven't we? Part of this wider plan to clean up social media, as Melanie was saying, and search engines under the Online Safety Act.
Well, the Act is considered one of the toughest regimes in the world for tackling harmful online content.
So I've been looking at what it actually is. Who's going to apply it? How can it be enforced? The Online Safety Act became law in October last year, and it puts new duties on social media companies, search services like Google, and pornographic content services. Online platforms will have new responsibilities to protect users. That includes improving their enforcement of age restrictions, preventing, detecting and removing illegal content, stopping children from accessing harmful content, and making it easier for users to report problems when they arise. It's the independent regulator, Ofcom, that will have responsibility for implementing the new law, which is expected to be enforced from the summer of 2025. Any companies that fail to comply with the Act could face fines of up to £18 million or 10% of their annual global turnover. Criminal action could be taken against senior managers, and companies could even face what are called business disruption measures, like banning their UK income. The Online Safety Act has faced opposition from tech companies, with platforms like WhatsApp and Signal threatening to pull out of the UK over privacy concerns. And before becoming law, the proposals faced opposition from some Conservative MPs on the grounds of free speech. Some online safety campaigners feel the Act still doesn't go far enough. They're disappointed that it doesn't prevent adults from accessing harmful content.
Well, smartphones and social media have, of course, become very much a part of the lives of lots of young people. And Jay McCubbin has been hearing from children, parents and teachers about the pressures that they bring.
Caitlin and her brother Dom were 9.
We are allowed to look at their phone at any time, to check messages, to look at online history.
Felicity was 8. Her cousin Aaron is still waiting.
This sometimes causes a bit of conflict and they sometimes fall out over it. Do they? Yeah.
The worry has always been this. Put kids in the driving seat with smartphone technology and who knows what will happen.
It's just the language, what we can view, if there's someone who's not who they say they are.
Online bullying, definitely, like other children being able to bully Aaron while he's at home. And that should be his safe place, definitely.
You feel very strongly about it, don't you?
Yeah.
Almost all parents worry, but the pressure is irresistible. Do you have a mobile phone yet, Cooper? Would you like a mobile phone?
Yeah.
Today, a quarter of 5 to 7-year-olds own a smartphone. So far, you've resisted.
Yes, non-negotiable. The other 2 were 10, so I've got to stick with the same plan for him.
10 years ago, almost all 13-year-olds had a smartphone. A decade on, it's almost all 10-year-olds, like Cooper's siblings.
I don't think there's any need for children to be on social media until they're 16. I don't think that there's no need for it. They see each other at school all day anyway.
So why are your kids on social media?
Because I didn't know the dangers around social media at that point. If the parents don't know, aren't educated in it, how are we supposed to educate the children on it?
You want some help with this, don't you?
I do, yeah. I do. I do.
Many parents are desperate for help.
Hello, Claire.
At the start of the year, you launched a campaign and you were overwhelmed with the response.
Initially, it was just a WhatsApp group with the two of us. And 2 months later, it's 75,000 parents across the UK.
That's 75,000 parents who have made a pledge to give their kids a smartphone-free childhood until at least 14.
You know, it's the mental health, it's the loneliness, it's the depression, anxiety. You know, there's loads of evidence now that these things are not good for our kids.
These are the keys.
These are the keys.
That caused the revolution.
That caused the revolution.
This Accrington school banned mobile phones, so every morning they go straight in a locker. In February, Westminster told all schools they should prohibit their use. But that's should, and not all schools have. Do you think more schools should do this?
Personally, yes. I do think that it is having a positive effect from a mental health point of view, that it does give pupils that break from their mobile phones.
It's quite addictive to scroll on TikTok.
Do you just scroll?
Hours.
The ban, how did everybody feel about it?
At the start, I was really against it.
Go on, tell me how passionately against it you were, Lilia.
Very passionately. Thought like you'd feel a bit lost without it.
What you're describing sounds a little bit like withdrawal symptoms.
Definitely.
Now that it's in place, I feel so much more safer about it because I haven't got that constant buzz in my pocket.
Who feels it is just addictive?
Greater protections for young minds are gaining pace, but are they enough? And did they happen soon enough? This generation is the testing ground. Jane McCubbin, BBC News.
You are watching a very special edition of BBC Breakfast this morning. We are joined here in the studio by the parents, the families of children who have died as a result of social media in different ways. We're talking about their stories, about the children and what can be done now to change things. We're joined here on the sofa by Technology Secretary Michelle Donlan.
Morning.
Morning. We have had some incredible stories this morning. It's been very powerful questions and these parents need answers. You are Technology Secretary. What can you do to make sure that the families who are sitting here with us today find answers and can help make changes for children living in this country today?
Yeah, so the parents here today have been making changes already, and I applaud them for that. I've met the vast majority multiple times, and they've worked extensively hard with us to produce this piece of legislation to ensure that other children don't go through the horrors that their children did. And no words can express how strong these parents are in their belief to try and change the current system. And that's what we've done with this piece of legislation. That's why we're trying to implement it at the moment. And today is a landmark moment because we've really fleshed out the how. So before we were talking about what was changing, this is how it's going to change. So things like aggressive algorithms, things like ensuring that we actually know the age of the users that are on social media. Melanie from our regulator, Ofcom, spoke before about the fact that nearly 40% of 5 to 7 year olds are on social media. I find that outrageous and it has no place in our society.
What do you mean outrageous?
It is outrageous, isn't it? It's the fact that...
Outrageous for who, though?
Outrageous for the implications that could have on the children and their mental health, their well-being. And the only people that are to blame for this are the tech companies. And that's why, you know, my message here, sitting on your sofa today, is that the tech companies don't need to wait for the full implementation of this bill. They can start now. And some of them already have, but they need to go further and faster to make the changes.
They are waiting. We know they're waiting because in the States there was a Senate hearing where 5 tech bosses gave evidence in person, which was quite memorable. Mark Zuckerberg had to get up and apologise to American parents who'd lost children. They also had to submit written answers outside of that session. In Meta's written answer, they say they are waiting for Ofcom to publish its codes of practice. So there is a delay, and the tech companies are really just sitting was going to say a rude word, sitting down and not doing anything because they are buying as much time as they can. How can we make them move?
Yeah, so I feel your frustration on this, and if we could fully implement the bill tomorrow, I'd be doing it. I absolutely would, and we've spoken about this many times, Ian. And I managed to personally get that time down. I squoze it with Ofcom because I wanted it to be done as quickly as possible. But there is a bit of a trade-off because these are companies that are multi-billion-pound organisations. What we don't want to do is do so fast that it has lots of loopholes or that they can easily litigate and it's chewed up in the courts for years. We want this to be robust. We want it to be bulletproof to make sure that actually it delivers. And that's why it's 18 months in law. They can't go past that. We're already 6 of those months through. And it's a step-by-step, and we've made sure that the priorities are at the beginning, like pornography, like children. And today, Ofcom have put the meat on the bones. You know, there's no doubt now for social media companies what they need to be doing. It's like a manual for what they need to be doing.
Do you think they're scared?
Look, I think that they have invested in lots of tools in the past, but they're not good enough. And at the moment, we have children on social media that legally aren't meant to be, because under our data laws, it's meant to be 13. And as I said before, we're seeing kids as young as 5 on social media. And then the other thing is that for too long, the onus has been on the parents. When it shouldn't be on the parents, it's absolutely impossible for the parents to be there all the time and checking what their child is doing. And children are clever, aren't they? They'll find a way around this. That's why it has to be the job of tech companies to ensure that all harmful content goes, that platforms are suitable for children over the age of 13 if their parents want them to be on there.
We know that Rishi Sunak's got links to Silicon Valley and we've seen him hanging out with Elon Musk. I mean, if he can't get answers from these big tech bosses and get them to the table, who can?
Well, no, I don't want you to think that they're not to the table. So that we worked with tech companies throughout the passage of this bill.
But you seem really frustrated that you can't get the delivery.
I'm not frustrated about that. I'm frustrated that in an ideal world, I'd get it done next year. But that's not how things work, is it? We've got to be realistic. And we've also got to make sure that this is effective and robust and that I'm not sitting here promising everybody that things are going to change and then it'll fall apart within a few months. What I want to do is ensure that we have a system in place that actually prevents children from going through what the parents hear children went. And I've met with these social media companies throughout the passage of the bill. Everything we've asked them to do is doable. They've already begun to do it. My message is not, should they do it, will they do it? My message is, do it as fast as you possibly can.
OK, should we turn to Stuart? I think our viewers will remember the terrible case of your son, Ollie Stevens, who was murdered by 2 teenagers. That murder had been plotted online. There was evidence of bullying online, wasn't there? Stuart, what would you like to ask the Secretary of State?
Thank you. I've 2 questions, really. One will lead into the other. I mean, one of my son's murderers left the scene laughing, skipping, joking. This shows the level to which children are now desensitised to their value of life has disappeared. They don't have a value of life anymore. And what little regard they have for it. I mean, this is amplified and perpetrated by social media. I mean, the evidence we have is with Thames Valley Police and through Ollie's court case, that the evidence is utterly horrific. And it just shows a complete and utter lack of care for life. How can anybody deny that social media is harmful to under 18s? And on your point just now about children 5 years old seeing social media, we work very closely with a local primary school. These kids, it's the best years of their schooling lives, primary school. Yeah. And the teachers there are having to deal with the fallout from harms on social media at 8, 7 and 6. And we're not just talking a minor argument, we're talking some quite graphic and horrific stuff. They should never see that stuff in the first place. So are we going to be able to bring a halt to that? Why does a child need to have access to military-grade end-to-end encryption? Because as parents, we have no way of monitoring their phone access. So I was just wondering where we go from there.
Yeah, and look, you know, your story is heartbreaking, and I completely agree with you. Children shouldn't be subjected to harmful content like violence, or pornography or any of that type of content that can deeply affect them and, like you say, desensitise them to be able to live in the real world. Yeah. And that is why, under the Act that we passed, it means that all that harmful content, not just illegal content, or harmful content to children, has to be stripped out. They cannot see it. And at the end of the day, the regulator has big teeth. It will be able to fine them up to 18% of their global turnover. You know, that could go into the billions of pounds. So the incentive is there not to not comply with the piece of legislation.
Well, foolishly, we believed that with our children using these platforms, they were quite harmless, and there was a duty of care by these companies. We couldn't have been more wrong.
Okay.
And throughout the evidence gathering for Ollie's trial, we were utterly sickened by the type of content they were having access to. And these are children. I mean, I've worked in the building industry for 40 years. I know what you know, I know what is seen by adults on a building site through their phones, but I was never aware that children would have the same access to that type of content. And there are 11 platforms used in Ollie's murder to plan, plot. It was evil. And how do we get these to stop? This is really what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, it's the harmful content, and then it's the repetition of the harmful content through the aggressive algorithms, which is something that Ofcom have been very clear about in the ask to tech companies, or the demand to tech companies to fix it. And that's a very core part of our piece of legislation. So it's about making sure that for all children, that social media is completely harmless, so you strip out all that harm, but also that they're enforcing their own age restrictions in their terms and conditions. The reality is, under our law with data protection, children under 13 without parental consent shouldn't be on these platforms anyway, but they're not doing anything about it because we haven't been enforcing it. Well, we haven't been enforcing it, and now we will be with this piece of legislation and our regulator that you've just been chatting to, and that goes further than any country has done. But that said, you know, we want to continue to build on this because this is a really important area.
OK, more questions coming in just a moment, but now, just to let you know that, of course, we have contacted all the social media companies to find out how they are tackling this issue, and this is what they told us.
Meta, who operate Facebook, Instagram, Threads and WhatsApp, told us content that incites violence, encourages suicide, self-injury or eating disorders breaks our rules, and we remove that content when we find it. We've also developed more than 50 tools and resources to support teens and their parents, and will continue our work in this space. We will start to hide more types of content for teens on Instagram and Facebook in line with expert guidance. A spokesperson from TikTok told us TikTok does not allow videos showing or promoting dangerous activity or challenges. We proactively find 99% of content removed for breaking these rules before it is reported to us. Compared to other platforms, TikTok has some of the strictest policies and strongest enforcement. Snap, who own Snapchat, sent us this response. We have extra protections for under 18s and offer parental tools so parents can see who their teens are talking to and set content controls. We support the aims of the Online Safety Act and work with experts to inform our approach to safety on Snapchat. We also contacted X, formerly known as Twitter, and YouTube, but have had no responses back yet.
It's interesting, isn't it? We're talking here to parents who are trying to get answers from tech companies, and there we have X and YouTube not replying to us, and we're on BBC One for 3 hours this morning. That's just how challenging it can be. George.
Yes.
You're here to talk about your boy, Christopher, who tragically took his own life after seeing messages online that encouraged him to do so. I know you have a question for the Minister this morning. Just tell us a little bit about what answers you need.
First of all, I'd like to clear the bit about taking his own life. I mean, as in humanity, that's what it looks like. But my terminology on that is murdered, because this is what the tech companies allow predators to attack us, to attack our children in various different ways. And as you could see, we're a group of 11, 12 families here already, and I've got the chance to meet a lot of other families who haven't got the ability to come on and say their story because they're heartbroken like all of us are. I need to make a point that the clock is ticking. We keep saying we will try, we keep saying we will we will do. But let's start with the simple things like, you know, how about if tech companies like TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and all of the rest of them start monitoring what they're allowing to go through now, as opposed to wait for another God knows how long until we lose more and more lives. Every second counts. We're here to save lives. I have had to set up a charity to save other children's lives, take children out, give them fun, activities, you know. So, you know, why can't the tech companies look at us very seriously and look what's going around and put aside the fact that they're not going to be making any money from it and just use their heart to help save children's lives? And this is where we're going with this, and we've had enough of it. And we, especially us here and as a group, we will continue doing what we're doing until we get this sorted. And that's what we want to do, and that's very important for us.
Yep, well, look, I completely agree with everything that you've said. It is vitally important that we can stop our children from being bombarded with this hurtful and hateful content that is having devastating impacts on them, not just here and now, but in their long-term future as well. But we're not waiting now. We've passed this piece of legislation. It is a law. We're in this stage now where we're actively implementing it step by step. Today is another landmark where we've fleshed out the how. We've given them the manual for what they've actually got to do. So we're not waiting anymore. Can you go on to, you know, on your computer or your phone now and see it all change dramatically overnight? No. But this is a step-by-step process, and we are already a third of the way through this implementation.
I understand that, but can I make one more point? That, OK, fine, so if someone or a predator decides to post something that is of dangerous content, they'll be able to do that even today, even this very second. However, other companies like eBay, who are a very good company, they won't allow a post to go out because it's got a phone number on the script, and because the phone number on the script, it's going to allow the person who wants to buy that item call the number direct, and eBay will lose money. So they would monitor it. So before it goes live, they will make sure that that won't go live until that number's off. So why can't the tech companies actually look at that in a similar way immediately?
So they already do some of the stuff, but the problem is that a lot of children are falling through the cracks, and we've been sealing up those cracks with the Online Safety Act and saying that every single child should be protected. And so they do some of that stuff, but we're saying it needs to be across the board, and that's why Ofcom have told them exactly how they need to do it, so there's no doubt. So they can't sort of do something that's half-hearted. They've given them the manual today. Now social media has to implement that manual.
We're not believing the quotes that just showed up on the screen. I'm sorry.
I didn't see them.
Well, no, the quotes that say they have everything in place and all their policies are perfect and they're... Yeah, it is. It is. It's just somebody writes that out.
There is a timeline for this stage?
Yes, so we put that into law to make sure that it is actually met. And it's an 18-month timeline in total. We're a third of the way through, but it's
From
not...
now?
No, so we're a third of the way through, so there's a year to go, but it's not a year with nothing. You do it in stages per stage. You're building up all the time, so it's an implementation road rather than...
But you know the cases are growing up in numbers.
But that's why, so today they've already launched a massive part of it.
We are in a situation that it's a normal thing to watch on TV every week a case like our case.
Yeah, and every week you will see more and more changes happening. And what we did was we dealt with the important stuff first. So we dealt with children at the very beginning of this, so they don't wait till the end of that time period.
There is a plan B in case of we don't get any point with the companies?
Well, they have to, because in the legislation, they have to comply. If they fail to comply, the regulator can fine them potentially billions of pounds. We can also then take further steps, which are to do with disrupting their business, like blocking advertising, etc. So we've really thought of everything to make sure that they do comply. In addition, if it was to do with child abuse and sexual exploitation, their executives could even face criminal time. So this bill is really robust. And when I've spoken to the tech companies, they're not talking about trying to get around this because they don't want to face those consequences.
But we have the tools to enforce these fines?
Yes, absolutely. That's why we've invested a lot of money and people into Ofcom to make sure that we've got the manpower and the ability to actually ensure that this piece of legislation works.
Can we turn to Ellen as well? Ellen, you lost your son Jules 2 years ago, 2022.
Yeah,
Do you have a question?
I do. So I, naively, and speaking to other parents today, I didn't know that parents didn't have the right to access their children's data. Now, as a parent of either a living child to protect them, or in my case, my deceased child, I can't see what was on his TikTok. They won't respond to me. They won't release his data. And some of us are in very similar situations. And talking today, is the law going to protect that and change it so parents have the right to either protect their living children or, in my case, and, you know, Holly, for example, to see what they were looking at?
Yeah. So we did look at this, and it's a balance between the child's privacy as well, because sometimes parents might not always have the best intentions when they're trying to secure that information. And some parents may be abusers or perpetrators themselves. And so there was a balancing act there. So what we did within the data law that's going through Parliament at the moment is that we actually enhanced data rights to make sure that Ofcom, the regulator, can access the information on behalf of the coroner should a child have been deceased because of something to do with social media. And therefore, then they can give that information that's suitable to the parent. But it was a balancing act that we looked at. And we also looked at what other countries are doing on this, and France and other places.
But in my case, we have to reopen the inquest to be able to get that information, because we can't just go to them and get it now because they've closed the case without looking at social media.
Yeah, that's the same with mine.
But, I mean, isn't it...
Yeah, so that...
I think the coroners now have powers to...
But they've already said they don't, because it was ruled after the 1st of April and Jaws's was inquest.
So yours was before this law change.
Yeah, so
but the coroners will have that power via the via Ofcom.
So long as we reopen the case, which we're appealing to do.
So you can't look at it retrospectively, you have to reopen the case.
Correct.
Because in our case, a lot of the data was erased, and it was the difference between a manslaughter and a murder charge. And we feel very bitter about that.
But if you could reopen the case and get the data from TikTok or whatever, or...
Yeah, you've given me food for thought.
Well, we were talking about that earlier.
It's interesting seeing these bonds and these similarities, these connections emerging between you, even though your stories are also different. You know, looking at our inbox, there are so many people getting in touch this morning. Thank you for all your messages with questions. So much praise for all of you for coming here today and showing solidarity and putting the questions. One thing that lots and lots of people are repeatedly asking is what age children should have a mobile phone. 18, and Esther, I know this 16, is something that you've talked about very powerfully, isn't it? You believe that children shouldn't be able to have a functioning, complex smartphone with apps and social media till they're what sort of age you're thinking?
Well, I've set up a petition. It's got almost 120,000 signatures now to get mobile phone companies to take more responsibility for children's welfare. So I would like to see a phone which, at point of purchase, is set up and it's safe by design for children. It can have apps such as monitoring apps, so it will flag up any harmful words, and it will stop. Like, you won't be able to download social media apps, and that was another thing that I would like to ask. Do you think maybe that the age for social media should be increased, and how did we come to like the age of 13? Because it seems really quite low.
Yeah. So I think this is an important point. I think that the problem we were trying to deal with is that the current law says 13 in effect because of data laws, and we see a wash of children underneath using social media. So we need to make sure that actually the current status quo is actually applied, because it's not enforced at the moment, and we know that. And what this new Online Safety Act will do is ensure that social media companies have to abide by their own terms and conditions. They have to do the age of 13. But there is a broader debate to say, is 13 right? Should it be 14? Should it be 15? Should it be 16? And I think that is something that we do need to consider. And that's why I've met with you a couple of times, Esther. I've met with a number of you to discuss that and to really think about this. And we always said that the Online Safety Act was the start of a journey, not the end destination. And we need to continue to layer up and build on that. What we've done is really big. It is groundbreaking. It's more than any other country in the world has done in this space. Is it job done? Absolutely not, because our children and their well-being, I think, matter more than anything. Yeah. And we should always be prioritising that and re-evaluating and going that bit further.
Yeah. Can I just ask, when TikTok and the other social media platforms gave their statement, do you actually believe what they're telling you? Because I can 100% now say the response from TikTok is not truthful. And I know because I searched up There's another child within the last week or so that's lost their life, age 8, and I looked up the challenge that this child has copied, and the stuff that came up promoting suicide is... I didn't sleep that way. It's absolutely disturbing, and that's what our children are being exposed to.
Why aren't they allowed to publish this content?
That's a really simple and really powerful question.
So under the Act,
Why?
they're not. And one of the things that I added into the Act was to make sure that self-harm and suicide was the promotion of it was illegal, because I was gobsmacked when I took over the role that it wasn't already illegal, because it seems common sense to me.
We can show you the video straight after.
Well, that's why we've used this piece of legislation to be a vehicle to add in those things. And you said, did I recognise or did I believe in all of the comments that if we thought that everything was perfect and that these companies were doing as much as they possibly could, we wouldn't have done this piece of legislation. We've done it to make sure that they change.
Michelle Donlan, thank you so much for talking to us this morning and for answering all of those questions. We could keep talking all morning, I know, but I just want to say a very, very special thank you to all of you, to all of these parents here with us on BBC Breakfast. This has been your programme. Thank you for bringing the stories of your children to us. I hope someone watching at home will have been helped by everything that you have shared this morning, so thank you.
Yeah.
We're very grateful, thank you.
We don't underestimate how difficult it is to talk about this to anybody at all, so to come and talk to all of us, the country, about it is phenomenally powerful. Thank you all. It's 9:05.
Let's go to Matt, who has today's weather for us. Morning, Matt.